Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi. Now recently you'll have seen I've been doing quite a lot of work on the Adventures of Indiana Jones figures, or the Raiders of the Lost Ark figures, because I've been given a few that were missing parts and missing some outfits, and I've been remaking those from scratch. And one of the figures that I had in my collection already was this version of Toht, and I've always disliked the jacket that he comes with. It's made out of a stiff plastic, and it means that you can't actually move the figure around that much. It really limits what you can do with him. So I thought it would be quite fun to try and make a soft goods version of this jacket, similar in the way that I've made the capes for the map room versions of Indy that you can see in the background. So that's what we're going to be having a go at today. Right, so here is my Toht figure, and as you can see he comes with this rather nice looking sort of plastic jacket that hangs over his shoulder, and it's from an iconic scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark where he comes into the tent and raises his hand, so you can see the burn mark on his hand there. But it sort of limits what you can do with the figure, because he has another hand under here obviously, and if we take that off you can see he is holding a gun, and you can't really do a lot with the figure when that jacket is on. It sort of limits him to one pose. So what I wanted to do was take this as the basis and try and make a version out of some fabric that we can still drape over his shoulders, but it will mean that we can actually move the figure around a bit more. This is just too rigid. Obviously they've done it like this because they can put an awful lot of detail in. You can see all the belts and you can see the arms there, but what I want to do is sort of simplify this down so it's not so much a jacket as a cape, but it gives the figure much more sort of playability. So I'm going to use this as my basis, and we'll see what we can do, see if we can make something that works with the figure and sort of matches in with the rest of the figures, because all of the other figures in this line and this wave have soft goods capes on them. This is the only one that has this sort of hard plastic jacket, so it sort of stands out as something that doesn't particularly fit with the rest of them. So where to start with making this cape? Well, I had a quick look at some of the other capes that I've made for various figures, and I found one that looks like it's a good starting point, because if we look at the original jacket that he wears, it's got very sharp shoulders there, and I was thinking that looks remarkably like the Luke Jedi cape. So this is the Luke Jedi replacement cape that I've made. You can see the shoulders are fairly pointed, and I think we can make them a little bit more pointed. So that was my sort of idea as the starting point. So I'm going to use the pattern that I've made for that as the basis. But then we need some way of attaching it onto this figure. Obviously this has gone all the way around his neck and it's been sewn. On this one, he's got an open neck at the front. So the alternative way of fixing these things is actually to use the way that the Kenner Superpowers figures are attached. So these have a little bit of plastic or a bit of metal inside the back of them, and they clip onto the neck of the figure. So you can see here, it's just a little C shape, and that clips quite nicely onto Batman's neck. So I'm going to use a combination of the Luke Jedi cape and my Kenner Superpowers Batman cape as the starting point for making this new sort of cape slash jacket for the Toht figure. Okay, so we've jumped a little bit forwards here because I've done a bit of work off camera. I printed out my Luke Jedi cape pattern, and I've started to modify it. I've trimmed a bit off the bottom because the Jedi cape is quite long. I've also trimmed some bits off the side because obviously we want it to wrap around but not to sort of join at the front in the middle. I've added a bit of a lip at the top here as well, which is where we're going to hide a little bit of paper clip or something to make the clip that goes around the neck. And this is a sort of a rough guide of what I'm going to make. So I'm now going to sort of cut this out of some fabric and do a little bit of sewing. If this does all work, I'll do a proper version of this pattern, but at this stage this is my sort of prototype version of a new cape for Toht. So yeah, let's get making this and see if it actually works. So the fabric I'm using is this stuff called toy knit, or looped fleece. I've shown this many times before. It's the same sort of material that they made Star Wars capes out of, the sort of Jedi era Star Wars capes. It's got a nice fluffy side and then a little bit of a sort of flatter side, and it does produce a very nice looking cape. You can see here these were made out of the same sort of stuff. So what we've got to do is cut out this pattern. I've already stuck some sticky tape on the back of it, which I've taken some of the stick off. I'm going to stick this onto the toy knit and then cut it out, and then we've got a little bit of sewing to do, which I will talk through as I sew it. But this will be the sort of the first go at making this cape, and we'll see how it works. If it works really well, I also have some pleather which might be fun to try and make it out of, because obviously his jacket here is supposed to be leather. That's why it's made out of this sort of nice shiny plastic. And yeah, the pleather I have should do quite a nice job. It may not be easy enough to work with because it's a little bit thicker than this, and it might be quite awkward to sort of get it to shape and sort of form shapes, but we can have a go with it. If this works nicely, we'll have a go with the pleather, but for now the toy knit will do the job and it will match in with the rest of the figures. So let's get this cut out and then we can do a bit of sewing. Now that we've got that cut out, we can do the first piece of sewing. So what we've got to do is fold this little flap down like that and then just sew along the bottom edge of it, because we need to make a little tunnel that we can insert a small piece of paper clip to make the little sort of neck connecting piece. So let's get that sewn up. Then we can insert the piece of paper clip, and then we'll get the shoulders sorted out and get this tested on the figure to see that it actually fits. But yeah, first thing to do is just to sew along this edge here. So now that that's sewn, I've cut myself a little piece of the paper clip. I've just flattened that out so it's straight, and there's about 2 centimeters of paper clip there. We can insert that into the little tunnel we've made. Make sure it's in the middle. Now we need to sort out the shoulders, and you'll see on my original Luke pattern we've got this little curve here and a fold line, so we're going to be doing pretty much the same on this. We want to fold it fairly close to that piece that we have just sewn, the sort of little flap, and try and keep it sort of fairly straight down. I'm now going to sew in a curve around that corner because this will be making the shoulder, so you can see here where the curve is. Along that sort of line there, just a little curve, and we'll do the same on the other side. Once we've done all of that, we can then turn everything back the right way, because at the moment you can see this is the inside of the material and that is the outside, so we're sort of folding it the wrong way round, and then we'll turn it round the right way and we should get the cape. So let's sew these little corners. I'll do the same on the other side, and then we'll also have to bend the bit of paper clip to fit around the neck, but this I think should make quite a nice sort of cape jacket looking thing. Okay, so you can see those are the corners now sewn in. I'm actually just going to trim off the excess material that's there, just so that when we fold this back around the other way, there's not too much sort of sticking in the shoulder. So I can just trim those little excess pieces off like so. Now what we're going to do is turn this the right way around, so we just turn this over like that. Hopefully everything will fold in as I expected. Oh, it has, yes, that's working well. We've got that little piece of paper clip inside the neck, so I can now start to shape that. I'm just going to gently add a curve to it, make it a sort of C shape, so that this will clip around Tot's neck. Let's do that. Oh, that's good. So you can see we've ended up with it's rather a cape looking thing, but this should, I'm hoping, fit on his shoulders and also clip onto his neck. Oh, it does. There you go. That's quite nice. So I can tuck this right hand side hopefully behind his arm a bit. Yeah, look, there you go. That's not too bad. That is really looking quite nice. I'm going to make a few little modifications to that piece of metal in the neck there, just so it clips on a bit better. But you can see that is looking rather nice. Yeah, let me make those little modifications and we'll come back to this. Right, yeah, I've just made a few little modifications to that neck ring just to make it a little bit sort of more of a C shape, so it really does pinch around his neck, and that now really holds in place very nicely. If I bring in an original Tot now, you can see how well that is working. So it does look like this cape. It's got one sort of shoulder covered and then we've got the other arm sort of free and easy, but this is obviously now out of fabric rather than a stiff plastic. So now that I'm happy with that as a prototype, let's take this into Photoshop and I'll tidy this up and make a full pattern from it, and then we can have a go at making this from some pleather. And I've also got one other thing I want to do to make this look more like a jacket than a cape, so we'll do that in a minute, but let's turn this into a proper pattern. And there we go, that is the final pattern. So this is my ruff that was done using the Luke Jedi cape, and here it is all tied up. So I've just printed this out onto some normal printer paper, and as usual I've stuck a bit of double-sided tape on this. So I'm going to cut this out quickly, and then I'm going to cut out some pleather that I have and see how well I can make a cape out of that. The pleather is a lot thicker than this toy knit or sort of looped fleece fabric that I'm using, so it may not work at all, but it's worth a go. And then once we're done with that, I'm going to add, as I say, I've got another thing I want to add to this to try and make it look less like a cape and more like a jacket. But so far that's looking very nice, and it's certainly a lot easier to deal with than the plastic jacket, and I think you can pose Toht a bit better because you can actually get to his hands and sort of nothing's in the way. So I'm very happy with that. But yeah, let's try and make a pleather version and see how that looks. Okay, and here is the one made out of pleather. I have to say I'm less convinced by this one. The fabric's just a bit too thick, so you can see we get real sort of bulgy corners here. I might be able to tone that down a bit just by sort of sewing a little bit more in, but overall I'm not that happy with it, so I'm not going to continue down this route. I think the soft goods version made out of the toy knit stuff just looks a whole lot better. This one obviously does look more like leather, but at this scale it's just too thick, so I'm going to stick with this one. So now we've got this, let's see if we can make this look a little bit more jacket-like by adding a belt to it. And yeah, we'll class the pleather version as a nice idea, but not going to work at this scale, it's just too thick. On the original jacket you can see there is this belt marked, and I wanted to try and sort of recreate that as best I could, and I've had a quick go just using a thin strip of that pleather. So I've cut myself as thin a strip as I can, and I've just sort of cut little notches into the fabric and sort of threaded it through, and that doesn't look too bad. But I actually think I can do something better with this thin ribbon. I bought this ribbon off eBay. This is 3mm satin ribbon, and what I plan to do is actually just sort of sew that around. So I'm going to hold it exactly where I want it, and then just do little loops to make these sort of little belt buckles or little belt loops all the way around, and sew that on. I think that will look quite nice. I'll just quickly do that and we'll see how it looks. I just want to give the sort of indication of a belt. I don't want the belt to work, it's just that there's some sort of detail on this bit of fabric. Otherwise it does just look like a cape, but I think by adding the belt it will look a little bit more fancy. So let's get that sewn on and we'll see what it looks like. And there you go, that's with the ribbon added. You can see I've just sewn a few little loops all the way around, and I've added a stitch at either end just to make the ribbon look like it's draping down, so it's like it's a sort of a belt hanging. And I'm very happy with that. It's not the easiest of things to make, but I think it really works quite nicely. It's not, you know, it's not out of keeping with the other capes and bits that were given to these figures. And for my liking, I think it works better than this plastic version of the cape. I think it just sort of hangs a bit nicer, and it means that you can actually move his arms, and they both are easily accessed, and the cape doesn't fall off because it's held on with that clip. So yeah, I'm very happy with how that looks, but let's take a look at them in better detail. It's always fun to have a go at a project like this because you're really trying to sort of second guess what the toy designers were thinking at the time, and I tend to think with the jacket on this they went down the route that clearly gave the best looking results, but it did sort of limit the playability of the figure. So what I've done here is reimagined it and taken the sort of fabric goods idea that they used for all the other figures and now converted that into making what is essentially a cape for the Toht figure. Obviously the original one had a jacket, but mine has ended up looking a little bit more like a cape, but I think it still does a really nice job, and it makes for a unique display piece. And I see more of these figures without the jacket than with it, so this is quite a useful alternative. If you have a Toht without a jacket, you can go ahead and make your own one. I'll be putting the pattern on toy-polloi.com, so if you want to have a go at making it, go and grab that from there. As well as the cape pattern, you can also download the map for Belloc. The Belloc figure comes with this tiny little map, and it's often lost, and I have to say a massive thank you to Nate, who very kindly scanned in an original version of this little map, which I have tidied up and turned into a file that you can download from toy-polloi.com. You just need to print it out onto normal printer paper, cut it out, and you end up with this tiny, not quite even postage sized little map that you can roll up and put into Belloc's hand, or as I had it here, into the map room version of Indy's hand. So to get this file you need to go to toy-polloi.com and you'll be able to find it there and download it for free. There are a whole host of other files there from various toy lines, so do have a good look around the site because I'm sure there'll be something of use to many toy fixers out there. If you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video. And if you've really enjoyed it, then head on over to my second channel, toy-polloi 2, and subscribe there as well. And thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.